Hey everyone, sfreezy back after a West Coast hiatus. I wanted to bring you one of the commanders who I think benefited the most from Edge of Eternities, and frankly, didn't even need the help. Ketramose the New Dawn is the most prolific card draw commander in Orzhov by a mile, and it rewards you for running removal, teaching players to be responsible as they dominate the board with 2-for-1s while drawing their entire deck. If you like having answers and drawing cards, this deck is for you. Not to mention, Ketramose is a beefy 3-drop 4-4 with Menace, Lifelink, and Indestructible, who will do work on the ground if you can turn them on, which is not a problem if you're building your deck correctly. This is where I come in, getting you the tips on how to maximize this God of Exile. We already mentioned he's a 4-4 with Menace, Lifelink, and Indestructible, but whenever one or more cards are put in exile from the battlefield or a graveyard during your turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This does not matter who is doing the exiling, only the cards are exiled during your turn. It also does not matter if it's multiple cards. Any instance of exile will draw you a card and lose 1 life. You do not get 2 cards if you exile 2 cards at once, but you do if you exile 1 card twice. He also can't attack or block unless there are a total 7 cards or more in exile, which should be pretty trivial given the contents of our deck. I'm not usually huge on ramp in my low to the ground decks, but we're drawing so many cards, we want to be able to cast our spells, which requires mana. If you draw a bunch of spells and you can't cast them, what have you really done? We have the obvious Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Talisman of Hierarchy, and Wayfarer's Bauble, as well as Thought Vessel. Since this deck actually can and will overfill its hand, it's not a ramp spell, but we're running Reliquary Tower for the same reason. Knight of the White Orchid are creature-based ramp that love being flickered, including repeatedly with something like Sword of Hearthstone, which is a must for this deck. It exiles a creature each turn and ramps an untapped land for a plethora of 1-mana removal spells, and exiling the creature will draw us a card. This sword does it all, truly a sword of X, Y, and now even Z. Lastly, Smothering Tithe, which will ramp us the most. Our opponents will often be behind on board and unwilling to pay the tax. They'll have to further their own game plans to keep up, which may be impossible. This is a game changer, as this is a low to mid bracket 4 deck. It's not the most powerful, but it will be able to go toe to toe with anything because it can remove everything, and you can destroy your way to victory when the dust settles. Now, let's get into the real reason to run this deck, the removal. You want to be able to sling removal all day, all night, and maybe even tomorrow too. Most of it exiles, so outside of commanders, things will stay gone. Deadly Rollick is the most obvious, as it lets your commander come down and immediately cycle a card for free. Next, we have Swords and Path as the other duh cards. You're in white, and Ketramose removes the card disadvantage associated with 1-for-1s like these. Swallow Whole is weaker, but still fine to use with a creature that doesn't have haste and won't be blocking, or a commander if it's not turned on yet. It doesn't even specify non-token and pairs nicely with Emperor of Bones after it exiles something. At 2 mana, we get more flexible effects on our removal. Strategic Betrayal exiles an opponent's graveyard, and they exile a creature of their choice. They get to choose, but this is a mini farewell for 1 player at 1/3 the cost, and in our deck it also cycles. Exercise exiles an artifact, enchantment, or large creature, and the versatility is huge. Vanishing Verse will exile any monocolored permanent, much appreciated. Thraben Charm can exile all opponents' graveyards, or any number if you want to be political, and draw a card, or deal damage to a creature, or destroy an artifact or enchantment. You're not often doing damage to a creature, because you can just exile most of their stuff anyway, but it is there. With this deck, nothing is safe for your opponents, and unlike most removal piles, we will never run out of gas until our library is empty. Winds of Abandon can be a bad sorcery speed path to exile, or, for its overload cost, an excellent one-sided board wipe that also draws us a card. Dam doesn't exile, but it's our second board wipe of choice, either hitting a single target for 2 or destroying all creatures, excluding our commander because it's indestructible. But the hits keep on coming. Anguish the Making finds a home because Orzhov. I mean, to be honest, the first half of this deck tech is like a highlight reel of Orzhov's greatest hits, and the life loss is mitigated by all of our life gain cards in the deck. Kaya's Guile is effectively Orzhov command, letting us pick 2 amongst each opponent, sacrificing a creature, exiling each of their graveyards, importantly, after they sacrifice a creature. These types of cards resolve their effects in order, creating a 1/1 flyer, and gaining 4 life, all at instant speed. Legions to Ashes is the modern-day Maelstrom Pulse that exiles now, letting us get around go-white tokens and also removing tokens that are copies of permanents. It will still draw you a single card, though. Be sure to watch out for opponents who can sacrifice the thing you target. My friend has a Renmaw deck, and this can get rid of all of the birds by targeting even your own bird. This way it can't be sacrificed in response. They can still remove it though, which could blow you out. If they remove it, they're often spending a card to do so, but sacrifices are so dangerous because we won't get the exiles we want to see happen. Soul Transfer can exile a creature or planeswalker, and if you control an artifact and enchantment, bring you back 1 from the yard. Speaking of planeswalkers, we have 2 in this deck, both acting as removal spells, go figure. The Wandering Emperor has flash, so we can hold her up along with her multitude of instants, and she can exile opponents' tap creatures, create bodies, or give our creatures counters. Mayhaps an Emperor of Bones for that juicy trigger. Ajani's Strength of the Pride is even better, if we can keep our life total high. If we're at 55 or greater life, this is a one-sided artifact and creature wipe for only 4 mana that also draws us 2 cards. Ajani is exiled, then everything our opponents control. Talk about value. Sheesh. We also have removal on creatures. I like to group this separately because these have the added benefit of being able to be flickered, though most are not inherently instant speed, which offsets some of that upside. Even though this deck does have one infinite combo, it predominantly wins through combat, so being able to attack is always welcome and necessary. Removal typal decks are the opposite of normal decks in that the veggies are the creatures used to win the game. The pieces of removal are the sweets. Lorna the Third Path supplements our artifact and enchantment hate, and can even draw us and an opponent cards. Use that sparingly, as we're already drawing so many cards. It will only be marginally useful to us, and very useful to opponents. You can politic, but I don't like to. Witch Enchanter is expensive at 4 mana, but being flickerable as a creature and being a land drop when we need it, making it auto-include in pretty much any white 1 and 2 color deck, but every single flicker deck. Skyclave Apparition is a flexible permanent removal for anything with 4 or less CMC. They get a body back, but it will never be bigger than our Menace Indestructible Commander, and we can flicker this for value, much to our opponent's dismay. Solitude is free, and also casts Swords. This card is currently terrorizing Modern and maybe bannably good. Just the kind of nonsense to throw in your bracket 4 deck. Now for the flicker stuff. Fun fact, flickering is exiling and counter Ketramose. So we have a couple flicker effects to get extra mileage from our ETBs, and extra mileage because on top of everything, they draw us a card. Touch the Spirit Realm cycles the flicker a creature and draws us 2 cards, either ours or an opponent's. It returns at the beginning of the next end step. Mostly, we want to use this on our creatures to be a 2-mana divination that re-triggers ETBs. The O-ring effect is bad, don't use that mode. Ephemerate is the best of the best. It blinks once for 1 mana and twice to bury our opponents a card advantage the following turn for no additional mana for some reason. Guardian of Girapur is a 3-mana 3/3 flyer that can blink an artifact or creature you control. The aggressive body is nice here to actually close out the games. All Fate Stalker has Warp and ETBs to flicker something when cast for a Warp. Then when it's cast from exile, it acts as a Banisher Priest. But when cast for 2-mana Warp, it will draw us 2 cards. Warp gives this deck new ways to draw even more cards, so you can warp the outcome of the game in your favor. Warp creatures also love being flickered as they re-trigger ETBs and stay in play. Starfield Shepherd is our second warp creature, either finding a land drop in the basic planes, or hopefully grabbing one of our many super impactful 1 or less mana creatures. Guide of Souls can gain us life or take to the skies. Marrow Bonar can chain exile cards from graveyards and draw us tons of cards, or Walking Ballistas to combo kill with Heliod the Sun Crown to win the game with infinite damage. This is the kind of deck that loves a combo as it sees so many cards in the first place. Shepherd is also a flying 3/2 to push through damage in late game, or if it gets flickered. Next, we have so much graveyard hate, your friends may try to flip the table. You can tone it down if you like, but let's be real. You play this deck to be the bully. Embrace archenemy status, and gut punch the competition. On lands, we have the ever-useful Boggart Trawler and Majuka Bog. Generally, I prefer Trawler outside of a green deck to tutor Bog, but we're maximizing hate, so of course we're running both. Pit of Offerings is worse, but it can hit cards from different graveyards, and possibly tap for both our colors. I wouldn't run it in a black deck that gets access to the first 2, that wasn't exactly this one. But in a non-black deck, it's a perfectly suitable option. And again, in this deck, we want every single option. Dauntless Scrapbot hits each opponent on ETB and comes with the Lantern token to ramp us. Edge of Eternities once again coming through for this deck. We already mentioned Emperor of Bones, but he will draw us a card each combat, and we have ways to give counters even outside of his own adaptability, which makes him a 4-mana 4/4 paid for in installments, in addition to possibly reanimating targets every turn. And then also each combat in our turn, we have to exile any card from a graveyard. Then we have Cling to Dust, which can draw us 2 cards for a single mana, or gain 3 life and draw a card, depending if we target a creature or non-creature card in our graveyard. Then it has Escape, which lets us reuse it repeatedly by exiling 5 cards from our yard, each time drawing up to 3 cards. Once to pay for the cost, once for itself, if we exile a non-creature, and then also just once for exiling a card from graveyard. Stone of Eric and now Spellbomb are both additional hate pieces we can tutor off of our Urza Saga. Abyssal Harvester can only snipe creatures that's turning at the yard, but it exiles them, drawing a card, makes a copy of them for us to use, and then removes any previous token copies of them from the game, drawing a second card if there are any other ones on the field from a previous turn. As long as you don't make a second one, you can keep the creature you copied. This card's very good. Gothy Voidwalker is a graveyard hate powerhouse that also just lets you copy any instant or sorcery spell your opponents use, or take any creature for free. You have a 3/2 shadow creature that's very evasive you will never attack with because you want to steal spells. Shred Memory is an instant speed graveyard hate spell that will draw us a card in our deck, and exile 4 cards from a single graveyard, or it can be transmuted for any of our high utility 2-drops, and there are so many, including 2 of our sweepers in Dam and Winds of Abandon, Artifact or Enchantment Hate, an Edict, Thought Vessel, Stoneforge Mystic, and Icecrown Scepter, to cast a copy of one of our instant speed removal spells each turn cycle. Ideally, lock a flexible spell under like Exercise or Thraben Charm to get maximum utility and value, but any exile spell is good, it's still going to draw you a card. There is also Archivist of Ogma to gain life and draw cards against green players, or in conjunction with some of our own removal. Argent Deus will give us a replenishing stream of either exile-based removal and a card, or exiling our own permanents to draw 3. It comes preloaded with the requisite 2 oil counters, and gets more whenever 2 or more creatures attack, which will happen in the game of Commander, unless you remove them all, but then you're still winning. Xenu, Keen-Eye Protector, pairs well with our Indestructible Evasive Commander, and a pile of removal, then exiling itself to smooth our draws and give us life after each combat, and we get to draw a card too. When it comes time to end the game, it's a 2-power flyer that's resilient to removal, Exiling itself is the cost. It can respond to any removal that does not have split second. Next, still at 2 mana. Did I mention how low this deck's curve is? The Frog Lady God was the one who got the curves. We have 3 powerful legends. Karlov of the Ghost Council grows when you gain life. You can pay additional Orzhov mana to exile creature into speed, drawing off Ketramose. Ailey, Eternal Pilgrim, will let you sacrifice a creature to gain life equals its toughness. If the card draw eats away your life total too much, but if you can get your life total above 50, it lets you exile a non-land permanent by sacrificing a creature. So we want to include ways to go wide, like Field of the Dead. Sorin of House Markov is a beefy blocker, quite a nice buff for 2 mana. It's got lifelink and extort, so we can profit in life as our spells draws cards. With an engine going, this deck does work. Then, when you gain 3 or more life in a deck with a 4/4 lifelink commander, don't ask me how, you exile Sorin, drawing a card, and he returns as a planeswalker that is up to 3 hits of removal, and pluses to give you additional ways to gain life. He also does have an ultimate that steals an opposing creature and buffs it, but we're mostly here for the downtick and because it cycles when it flips. Not to mention, having extort on both sides is huge. We need life gain. We also need to kill our opponents. Now, we also have Stoneforge Mystic, whose targets include Lion Sass, which will give us, for 1 white mana, draw a card. Cauldron Complete as an unblockable threat to flop into play that is indestructible. And the previously mentioned Sword of Hearth and Home to ramp, flicker, and draw cards on connection, even resetting Stoneforge. This is the quintessential sort of X and Y for any Stoneforge deck, and this deck even more so. Next, we have even more card draw outside of every single time we exile a thing on our turn. Even though our commander draws like Picasso, a little extra never hurt anybody. In our land base, Silent Clearing cantrips from play, and Minas Tirith will let us draw cards when we attack with 2 more creatures. Our indestructible 3-drop commander will usually ensure this comes in untapped. Halia is our last warp card. For 1 mana, she'll gain at least 1 life and draw a card if not removed. As a Soul Sister, she'll keep our life total cushion, but also draw cards if we can gain 3 or more life. Dang. If only there was something you could do each turn with a lifelink commander to gain life. We'll never know. Maybe you could play this battle, though. Invasion of Dominaria enters and draws a card and gains 4 life. Then if you defeat the battle, which is fairly simple since it has 4 battle points or whatever, it exiles itself, and you get a 4/4 with Flying and Vigilance, and draw a second card if your commander is out. All of our flickering and exiling will trigger my pick for most underrated card in the set, Elegy Acolyte. I think this card is so good. Gix, but without giving the ability to your opponents, and it makes a board, each of your end steps squeezing out a 2/2 colorless robot artifact token, and it has lifelink on a 4/4 body. This card is so good, and nobody's talking about it. Put Elegy Acolyte in your black decks. Aggro, control, doesn't matter. Card slaps. Court of Grace is also a card advantage engine that adds bodies. You'll love to see it in your control decks. Just watch out dropping this into token decks unless you have Legions to Ashes. If you can keep Monarch, a steady stream of 4/4s can often win you the game. Speaking of, God Eternal Laketra gives us 4/4s and is a persistent threat, resilient to removal, great for the Robins, or for some odd reason, the Mirror. Kalatas, Trader of Get, is a growing threat, powerful hate piece, and spawns an army if the deck has no synergy. In this deck, if you have Kalatas in your commander, creatures your opponents control that die will get exiled instead, drawing your card once per instance of any number of creatures dying. Lastly, to make an army, we have Field of the Dead. This is at its best in control decks that want to go long to get the most value out of the land drops, or in green because they're the best at most things. But 2/2s get a lot of extra mileage when your opponents can't stick large creatures very well at all. Now for some miscellaneous cards that I included. Let's start with one of my favorite most recent cards, Cross Your Revenant. Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink can help us stabilize in the early game, and we give those keywords to a creature and draw a card if it's in our yard, if we have the mana. Gurmag Angler is a 1 mana 5/5 is not impressive in Commander, but if delving cards from your graveyard, it becomes a 1 mana cycling 5/5, which is just fine. Demonic Bargain is a 3 mana tutor, but only after you exile your top 13 cards. This turns on your commander as a creature by itself, and lets you tutor through your remaining cards. Make sure to have a backup targeted to in mind. This card may not be for everybody, but I do enjoy it, plus the art is sweet. I ain't want to turn down no bargain. The Restoration of Iganjo helps smooth out mana problems, both getting up planes and letting you turn unwanted cards into permanents. Then it exiles itself and flips into a Vigilant 3/4, drawing you a card and providing colorless 1/1s whenever it attacks or blocks. We also have Sabine's Reclamation to get back our commander or any permanent, and then it flashes back, exiling itself from our graveyard, drawing us a card, and getting back 2 permanents from their graveyard. This card's very good in most decks, especially this one. Amaria's Call is an MDFC that lets you get 2 4/4 flyers and gives your creatures indestructible, certainly more satisfying as a top deck than a basic planes. Agadeem's Awakening can be a very nice value swing in the late game as well. Malakir Rebirth combos the Solitude quite nicely. As far as utility lands, the most powerful are already mentioned. Hall of Heliod's Generosity can rebind enchantment to top of the library, maybe Heliod himself to preserve the combo. Takenuma mills against back a creature. Iganjo is even more removal, and it's likely to be reduced in cost because of our commander. Demolition Field hits opposing utility lands that are powerful. I will say, in the era of station lands, having a way to deal with them and deny opponents massive tempo is invaluable. And this one gets you back a land for your trouble and 2 zombies if Field is active. This should be in most 2-color decks and almost all 1-color decks, and it's not expensive. Put more land hate in your mana base. Great Irrational City is excellent, often coming in untapped if you control planes, and it taps for black. You can then, for 1 and a black, tap it to exile creature card from your graveyard to make a 1/1 white spirit creature token. It's just an extra piece to draw you a card and make a body for only 3 mana. And then we also have Tomb Fortress, enters tapped, adds black, but for 5 total mana plus itself, including triple black, you exile it. which draws you a card, then mill 4 cards, and reanimate a creature in your graveyard. Only as a sorcery, but the exiling clause actually helps us here because we're drawing a card as well. The rest of our lands are fixing and basics, with half being snow lands and half not, to maximize our chance of field being online. Some budget options you can include are Kami of Jealous Thirst, which will use your card draw to drain the table, and it's also a 1/3 Death Touch for 3, or Luminant Primordial. It's a 7 mana 4/7 Vigilance that ETBs and casts swords on a creature for each opponent. Mysterion's Thirst is also not efficient, but it is a powerful removal spell that also pumps your commander to gain more life when it attacks. As far as higher budget with CEDH, you could run Angel's Grace for Thoracle. You can run Agatha's Soul Cauldron. I didn't include this in my list because there weren't so many activated abilities just by the cost financially, but it's definitely strong and pairs well with some things like Emperor Bones, Marrow Bone Gnawer, and Stoneforge Mystic. Conqueror's Flail is a Stoneforge target that prevents opponents from casting spells on your turn if equipped, but it's a 4 mana option when 2 mana ones like Voice of Victory and Grand Abolisher exist and are probably better. Plus, they're also tutorable with our Shred Memory. Shield Druid is a very not budget option for sure, but it's great in this deck to pressure opposing life totals and negate the life loss off Ketramose, actually gaining you life instead. And lastly, Necropotence, making you exile cards that hit your yard, is actually an upside. And as you all probably know, it's a busted in half card draw option. Hope you like this deep dive deck tech. This commander is very powerful as a control list and super fun if you like drawing cards, which I personally do. I think most people do, to be honest. This version is bracket 4 and has infinite combo and some tutors. Not to mention, it will exile most opposing threats and draw tons of cards, and also hate. What more could you ask for as a control mage? I could not recommend this commander enough if you like drawing cards and having answers to threats. However, always make sure to include ways to turn the corner in your removal typal decks. Don't sit your opponents a timeout. Actually win, please. If you like my content and want to see more deep dive deck techs, I've got a link here. If you want to check out my latest review for Edge of Eternities, including cards in this video, that can be found here. Please be sure to like this video and comment on cards you think should go in the deck. I'm always open to learning new interactions for weird and powerful commanders. Stay frosty out there and keep on brewing.